Well, as any community where there's artificial incentives to to invest in something based on an ideology that is disconnected from economy, we're in big trouble. And that's a general truth, but I think it applies to all of these things. I think over the last 9 or 10 years, from the federal perspective, particularly, we've seen kind of, and I think that's the way to say it. It's ideology based policy that is disconnected from the bottom line and economic feasibility, and that's where the disconnect happens, and that costs all of us.
Welcome to Cross Border Interviews, the show where we dive into the insights of municipal political leaders from across Canada. Now, our mission on the show is quite simple. It is to shine a light on the dedicated individuals who day in and day out work around the council table to shape the communities that we call home. And joining us for today's episode is County of Newell Reeve Arno Doerksen. The County of Newell is located in the heart of the Palliser Triangle, located in southeastern Alberta. With 1.5 million acres of land and over 7,500 residents, the County of Newell is a thriving municipality. The county has a full range of recreation, health, emergency, education, and cultural amenities. In addition to those, it offers the small community spirit that inspires a sense of belonging and provides a stable atmosphere where people can thrive. The cost of living is also generally more affordable than in your larger urban centers. Across Canada, our cities, towns, villages, and rural communities are alive with stories waiting to be told. Stories of innovation and economic development, resilience in the face of the housing challenges, and the financial hurdles municipalities overcome every day. At the Cross Border Network, we bring these stories to life. From coast to coast to coast, we're connecting Canadians to the issues shaping our communities and showcasing the people working tirelessly to make them thrive. With your support, we can expand our reach, amplify more voices, and shine a light on the challenges and triumphs of municipal life. For as little as $3.99 a month, you can help us grow and continue sharing the stories that matter most. Join us today and be part of this important mission. Together, we can tell more stories, build stronger communities, and make a real difference. Support the Cross Border Network now. Visit www.crossborderinterviews.ca today. Reeve, I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about yourself and talking about the County of Newell. But before we talk about the county, I want to talk about the man behind the persona of Reeve of the County of Newell. So I've got to ask the question I've started all my interviews off with, and that is, where did your sense of duty to serve your community come from, Arno?
That's a good question. As always, probably from when I was pretty young. My parents were served the community they lived in for many years on a volunteer basis, and made a difference in their community in remarkable ways, I think. And uh, that probably led to some of it, and then good experiences over the years. One of the a lot of local activity with curling clubs, community organizations, church, and then at some point, in the '90s, I got involved with Alberta beef producers, and had the privilege to serve with some good people at in all of those levels, whether it was local or provincial or national. And it sometimes you can do some good, and that's good.
Looking back, was mom and dad political growing up? Did they talk about politics around the dinner table, or are you the black sheep of the family and politics came a little bit later in life and their influence didn't have much on the political entrance of Arno into the political field in your later
Well,
life?
they were always supportive, but although they were directly involved in leadership of the organizations they were a part of, whether it was at the church or in the community. But they were more local in terms of their immediate activities. But also had quite an influence in the broader scale because they did a good job of representing their position on a regular basis. Not sure what the answer to that is really. I think it just kind of it had to do with being encouraged by other people to consider some of these positions too. So.
What was the decision to get involved municipally based on? Because looking at your background, you did enter into the provincial realm for some time, and then you entered into the municipal realm. Was there ever a thought that you would want to get involved municipally? Because your background just seems like you would want to go provincially or even federally. So, what was it about the municipal draw that made you say Arno could be good utilized at the council table of the County of Newell?
Well, I guess I'm not sure it was exactly those words, but basically we have been really well served municipally in this area for the County of Newell for 20 years, and we had a kind of a steady leadership from a council that worked together, and it resulted in all of the communities in the County of Newell being connected with paved roads. We've got a municipal water system here that is the envy of many, because the council of the day acted on it. I mean, this got started well before I was in Edmonton, but they initiated the first work on the municipal water program while I was there, and it's been a remarkable achievement, and asset that wouldn't have happened if they hadn't moved when they did. And uh, I've only been involved for 3 years, but when at the time there was going to be at least 7 of 10 new councillors in the county, and I guess I realized it occurred to me how well served we'd been, and I thought, well, we can't take that for granted. And I'm not saying my involvement is part of that necessarily, but it just seemed important. We have business and family interests in the community here, so I think local representation is important. And I actually was a little concerned about how things were going provincially at the time, and I wondered how we were going to impact that. Uh, and it seemed to me that through local representation, there might be an opportunity to impact what happens provincially as well. And, you know, um,
This is a weird
I think
question that
there's some truth to that.
I'm gonna ask a weird question, and because I know we're supposed to talk about yourself, but I want to you opened up the box, so I'm gonna play within it for a few seconds. Do you think that's changed in your time in municipal office? Because you seem to have a good working relationship with your local MLA, who happens to be the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith. Do you believe that you have a good working relationships, and the what's going on provincially is now sort of better off than what you first got involved in municipal politics?
Uh, well, we do have a good relationship, and we're working together on a lot of things, but that isn't new for the County of Newell. When I was in Edmonton, the County of Newell had a very strong reputation for working together with the City of Brooks and all the municipalities in the area, and that's something that occurred to me very clearly when I was in Edmonton, that relationship was a good one, and I also had a lot of strong connections to the county and other counties that I served too, or the county of Wheatland at the time. But looking around, you realize that isn't always the case.
Yeah.
But I've always felt like we get a lot more done when we're working together, even if we don't always agree, than fighting in the press or something like that. I just, I yeah, we have a good relationship, and I think that it's one that is good for all of us, really.
I want to talk about the role of Reeve and counselor. In your time in office, I can imagine you've come to the realization that every decision you make around that council table is not going to be universally agreed upon by your council members or even your residents. There's always going to be detractors. How do you make the best decision for the county, knowing that there are going to be those naysayers in society that if you say the sky is blue, they'll say the sky is not blue, it's green. How do you make those decisions on the best of the county, knowing that you're not going to please everyone?
Well, that, as you said, that is a reality. Um, I don't worry too much about it. Um,
I
uh,
love the honesty,
I,
Arno.
I, the fact is, you do your best and you try to listen to people, and I think that we're well represented around the council table. And you're right, we don't even around council don't always agree on things, but that's important too, because if we all agreed, then there'd only need to be one of us, right? So, so I think we've done a good job and very consciously worked to respect each other's opinions, and in spite of differing opinions, to really rally around that and still make the best decisions we can. Um,
So are
yeah,
there
I haven't had to worry about it too much, but it's not something that can be taken for granted because it doesn't always work. I know a lot of counterparts in other areas who struggle with some of that, and we're fortunate. We've got an excellent council. Again, we don't all agree on everything all the time, but we respect each other, and we're working together for the good of the residents, and I think that's the priority.
which is good to hear. I'm very happy to hear that. But you must put metrics into place when you're voting on things because you have to come to a decision that is going to impact people on a day-to-day level. Because, and we'll talk about this a little bit later as well, but the cost of doing business in today's world is astronomically compared to what it was 20 years ago. The cost of doing business for a farmer is horrendous right now because carbon tax, with everything that the federal government is downloading onto our communities, then we have people living paycheck to paycheck. How do you make the decisions that you need to make knowing that you impact the people as well?
Well,
Because you have property taxes that you have to pass, and that's a pass that you're going to have to put onto the community, the residents of your community. Is it hard to make those decisions?
well, it is. It's always difficult if things go up at all. We've seen agriculture the tax base go up a little bit, although it's still, we think, quite reasonable. But we're trying to, I think our view of governance and the things we're doing is let's stay out of the way where we can and encourage free enterprise to invest. We're trying to draw investment into our region. So I think we always have to keep that in mind. And uh, and then some of the other things fall into place. There are difficult decisions to make from time to time, but we're we're well served by a very competent and uh, bottom line oriented staff, which I can't say enough about. I mean, that has also provided the opportunity for us to look at some other things that aren't base, like, I guess the base activities of a county are roads, water, and waste, right? And if you don't do that well, then
You will hear about it from your residents, I'm
yeah,
assuming.
that's right. And we're not perfect in that regard, but I think there's a real effort from our staff and council to deliver where we can, and to be service oriented, and that's reflected in the way management approaches day-to-day business. And I appreciate that as a business person, um, because really our municipal government, we're here to make things better and easier for ratepayers. And I think we've had a little bit of success in that. One of the things the county does well, and this is kind of baseline because it maintain your assets, right? There's a lot of significant number of county paved roads in the area, and they all get crack sealed every year. Now, that sounds like an unimportant detail, but that improves the return on investment, makes the road last longer, and means you don't have to replace them as soon. And that's something that's other levels of government tend to miss sometimes. But I know that our county is very conscious of when they build an asset, let's make sure first that we maintain it, and secondly that we are prepared to replace it when it or update it when it needs it. So, and to start to put the resources away to do that.
anyone who
We're
knows
also
me Anyone who knows me knows that I like to travel around this province, and I have driven numerous times through the county of Newell, and I can attest to the fact that you guys have probably one of the best range roads paved systems in all of Alberta, because it seems like I have not hit one paved road whenever I'm in the county of Newell. But that's just me. I may have missed
Oh,
that one, but it seems like you guys have a really good infrastructure system and asset management program to ensure that nothing does get dilapidated in your
well, and
community.
that's a credit to the people who came before me for sure. And I said that earlier. I mean, the fact that they work together, literally all the communities in the county are connected with good paved roads,
Yeah.
and something that you can't take for granted. That's doesn't happen by accident. Yeah.
So why do you think that's important in today's age? Because we often find ourselves focusing on small, minute details, but it seems like the county is focusing on the larger picture, the county as a whole. You talk about how it's been in the past, but you're part of that now. You're part of that system that is continuing the work that past council has done to get the county to where it is today.
Mhm. Yeah, we've gone through a second round with water development for the ratepayers who didn't come on the first time and want to come on now. So we've done that. And you're right, like maintaining roads and continuing to improve them is important. I can tell you, um, I wore out a lot of vehicles in my younger days, getting out of the community on rough gravel roads. And at this time of the year, a gravel road with rocks in it is pretty hard on a vehicle compared to paved roads. So there is something that basically it's easier on assets that have to drive the roads, and there's also a great significant amount of industrial traffic from oil and gas activity that is active in this area, and I guess that's sort of something that we think about quite a bit too. Southeastern Alberta and our county is well developed for infrastructure for oil and gas, like pipelines and that kind of thing. Now we also know, as I talked about in January, there's been significant investment left the province, and that impacts us. And we think that we need to find ways to attract that back in. And I think some of the noise that's coming from south of the border now should be good for that. And there's some interesting examples of that, literally right in the community that I live in here, north of Gem in the Wintering Hills. There's a significant oil play there that is recently developed over the last 2.5 years, and I'm told it's going to change the way oil and gas, or particularly oil, is extracted and found in southeastern Alberta, and that's good news. Like there's a Swade Energy and Western Basin Energy are doing some work up here that they say is going to change southern Alberta in terms of oil and gas activity, and we desperately need that because we have the infrastructure in place. And the other area where we're well served is we've got great infrastructure for water, for agriculture, for irrigation, and that needs to be further taken advantage of as well, which it can be. But those are where there's some opportunities for us, we think.
On that note, I want to turn to the County of Newell as a whole. And before I start asking this line of question, I should preface this line of questioning with the following. This is a conversation between the Reeve and myself. This is not a motion of council. This is not a direction of council. This is not a policy of council. This is the Reeve's opinion and his opinion alone. It may line up with what's going on at council, but at the end of the day, he still needs majority of council members to sit around that table and vote on a direction of where the county is moving. So with that being
Absolutely.
said, Reeve, in your opinion, as of recording this at the end of January 2025, what do you see as the biggest challenge or challenges facing the County of Newell?
That's good. That's a good question. It's probably some of the same ones that face the rest of the province in some ways. I think some of the uncertainty that's coming from the U.S. At this point is it has an impact. Maybe not a day-to-day impact, but it has an impact because it impacts our residents, the oil industry, the agriculture for sure. There's some uncertainty there, and that's not directly our county, but it affects our ratepayers, so it affects us. And I think I think continuing to attract investment is a significant challenge, but also an opportunity. And we've got some interesting projects going on that hopefully will lead to positive results in that regard.
So before I ask the follow-up question, I just want to clarify something. We are recording this a few days before February 1st, where now President Donald Trump has said that he will impose a 25% tariff on all Canadian goods going into the United States. This episode will be airing after that, so I don't know if it's actually happened or not, so I cannot confirm that. So I will not stick to that, but I just want to make sure people know when we're recording this, so that way they're not
Yeah,
wanting
thank
to
you.
follow up on that question.
Yeah.
So with what you just said, attracting investment, which is understandably a high priority for a lot of municipalities, particularly with what's going on down south. How do you think the County of Newell has done their job in attracting those investments into the community? Because I've chatted with the Reeve of Lacombe County. I just recently chatted, as we talked about before the interview. I just recently chatted with the Reeve of Willow Creek, the MD of Willow Creek, and they are in the same exact boat. So, what is the attractiveness of Newell, the County of Newell, that you say to business owners or investors, come invest here because we have what you need?
Well, we have some tax incentives, some breaks on the first 5 years of property taxes for businesses that invest here, and we've got some good examples, like the JBS plant is just in the process of an $80 million expansion there to deliver burger patties. I mean, their big contract, I guess, is with Wendy's for all the Wendy's west of Manitoba. And that's happening in our own backyard here at the JBS plant. That's a significant shot in the arm for the area, but also I think gives cattle producers a lot of confidence that in this environment, JBS is here and still investing, so they're here to stay, and that's good for us. I think similarly, we have quite a built out infrastructure in oil and gas. So as there's interest in more activity in that area, a lot of people talk about it as a mature asset that is used, but with new investment, I'm told there's a good supply of oil and gas available. Now, gas isn't worth very much right now, but oil is, and with some of the new technologies that producers in this area have applied, we think there's opportunity. Another area is I'm not sure if you're aware, but we have over the last 2.5 years been campaigning to get a lease agreement for CDC South, a horticulture station in Brooks, which again, there is a provincially owned asset that was kind of put to sleep a few years ago. I think the current government kind of inherited what had happened there, but it's an $80 million asset replacement cost that has really reduced its contribution to the community. We used to have over 100 people working in the Brooks area at that facility in the summertime. And the good news is that just before the Christmas break, we were able to sign a 10-year contract on that facility. So and I have to say, we've been a little bit low key about what might happen there, but the interest in coming to do research and being involved in that on that facility has been very, very encouraging. There's groups from all over southern Alberta being a part of that, and that is encouraging. And just for the details, it's about a 750-acre facility that's set up for small plot irrigated research, and there's also a greenhouse there, a small in terms of industry, but has some ability to contribute to research, and there's interest in restoring that. And added to that is the grounds of CDC South. I mean, I remember when it was a place you'd go for a picnic. There's already people booking weddings for next summer out there because the intention is to get that place looking good again. There's a arboretum. There was a rose garden out there in the past. I think in short, a lot of community pride that we hope we can restore there, and I'm sure we can. So there's another example of an asset that needs to be used. We can't afford to leave that sit there, and I think I think we'll find a good partnership with the government. I mean, there needs to be some investment. The government owns the asset, so we need to see some investment in the next budget to at least keep the air in the tires and glass in the windows. Kind of, we don't want to take over an asset that's spent. But if it comes well maintained, we think that the activity out there can maintain what's going on out there, and it's been good to see agreement to that perspective from others around the province.
You as the County of Newell, I should say, but the County of Newell is home to some pristine farming land across Alberta. You probably are, as most rural municipalities are, primed to ensure that we, as when everyone tells me, to keep Alberta fed with farmland, with growing crops, with the cattle. This seems to be a prime location for the agricultural sector to boom. Is it hard to attract investment to your community while trying to still maintain that pristine agriculture land that Newell County the County of Newell is so known for across Alberta?
I mean, I think the biggest thing that draws investment in agriculture in this area is irrigation.
Yeah.
And we have a significant irrigation system out here, over 300,000 acres in the Eastern Irrigation District. It's quite a spread out infrastructure, but it's an infrastructure that's in good shape, and I think lends itself to expansion. There's some details that need to be worked out around how that happens, but with the province's focus on irrigation, the County of Newell and the Eastern Irrigation District is prime for growth in irrigated acres, and that's the kind of thing that will attract value-added investment. You know, and the JBS plant, the history of the JBS plant is testament to that. I mean, that you know, first of all, the feed mill and the feed lot and then the packing plant developed where it did because water was available, and we had entrepreneurs who took a risk and invested in the community, and so we think that can happen again at various levels as irrigation expansion happens. And to that end, I guess another thing that the county is I think proud of is the opportunity we had a couple of years ago to nominate Garnet Altwasser to the Canadian Agriculture Hall of Fame as one of the founders of the Lakeside enterprise and what it's brought to the community. And I guess we're pleased to have been able to nominate him successfully to that role, because he's certainly a worthy recipient of that honor.
Do you get a sense, and the reason I'm asking this question, and this is a very pointed question, so I do apologize if it comes out of left field, but as I mentioned, I've chatted with a few Reeves over the last few weeks, and one of the concerns that I'm hearing from the rural Reeves is the prime agriculture land that most rural municipalities rely on are being bought up by renewable energy companies to build wind farms or wind projects. I should clarify that because Reeve Sandberg of Willow Creek said I need to clarify that. Wind projects or solar projects, and that would take away that prime land. Do you have concern that the renewable energy sector may be buying up more farmland that it needs, because we need to feed Alberta, we need to feed Canada, and it seems like Alberta is the prime location with, you said, the irrigation system that your community has. It's bar none probably one of the most driving factors that most investors are looking for right now.
Yeah, that's right. We're not too concerned about that. I think our big, one of the things we've focused on or said we're an energy hub in a lot of ways. They said we've got a built out infrastructure for oil and gas. I think in terms of sunshine, we're one of the target places for, in terms of facilitating things like solar installations, and we have some of those. I mean, there are people who are very concerned about it, and we're concerned that they develop in the right places. But we think that will continue to happen in the right places. There is some land that's probably amicable to that. I think our big concern is that there isn't a lot of what was driving that in the previous years has probably been a subsidy factor that is somewhat hidden. And as long as it's developing based on economy, that's okay. Too much of it hasn't been. And as a county, we've taken a position on some advocacy through the RMA with regard to the federal net zero emission vehicle mandate. Fortunately, I think that's being backed off, or it will be, because there's not economy in it. And we also have had some input into the Canadian Sustainability Disclosure Standards activity that happened in the last number of years, and I think that's maybe taking a shift too, as a number of gives are across the country, as well as just put forward a motion to oppose the Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act federally through RMA. That's a federal act, but
can I ask a very
those
pointed
kinds of
question about
initiatives.
that?
Sure.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
very, very pointed question? How does these net zero policy that the federal government introduced impact Newell? Because it's understandable. You've said we want it repealed, we want it gone because it does impact us. Give me an example of how it would impact your community, because I'm taking your word at it that it impacts your community, and I'm assuming it does because it mostly impacts rural Alberta and rural Canada. So how exactly do you see it impacting your community?
Well, as any community where there's artificial incentives to invest in something based on an ideology that is disconnected from economy, we're in big trouble. And that's a general truth, but I think it applies to all of these things. I think over the last 9 or 10 years, from the federal perspective particularly, we've seen kind of, and I think that's the way to say it, it's ideology-based policy that is disconnected from the bottom line and economic feasibility, and that's where the disconnect happens, and that costs all of us. And it's a good question, because we've had people say, "Well, you're out of your lane talking about that stuff," but we aren't.
You aren't, though. You really
local
aren't.
government. No. Local government is where the rubber hits the road. And if there are things adding costs to our business, we're in trouble if they're artificially induced.
Because we always say that no other level of government taxes another level of government. They just don't. It's just the way it works. But it seems like the carbon tax is the one example where we can say no, technically, because every municipality has to pay their carbon tax at the end of the year, and that drives up the cost of business for you, the residents, and you, the mayors, or Reeves, when you're looking at your budget, you go, well, that's $100,000 that we could be paying another person to grade our roads or fill our potholes,
Yeah.
or crack seal our roads.
Our local school board, I think, estimated, to the tune of $125,000 over a period of time, the carbon tax had already impacted them. So it some of it's hidden, but I mean every all of the agriculture production has to find a market somewhere, and all of that costs more to get to market if those taxes are in place.
What's your outlook for 2025 for the County of Newell? I know you talked about it in your address to the Brooks Newell, the Newell Brooks region. I'm probably pronouncing that name wrong, and I do apologize to anyone who's listening who is part of that organization, but it's a great organization. What's your outlook for the County of Newell at the end of 2025? Are you optimistic that you are going to steady as she goes, or is there big things in the works in the county?
Well, I think a little of both. As I said publicly, I think that the change in messaging that's happened from the U.S. I mean, we're back in the energy business, the fossil fuel energy business. I think that's good for us. as I mentioned, the activity that's happening around CDC South locally. I'm really interested to know what that's going to look like by the end of the year. I think it's going to start to make a contribution to the community. And I'm hopeful that over time we bring back investment into the fossil fuel business in this province, and that'll be good for our county and for Southern Alberta. And I'm hopeful that we can get a focus on irrigation development too. And the province is taking a good lead on that. One of the things that I think is significant in terms of irrigation is the kind of the reemergence of the Airmore Dam as a project of priority on the Bow River. That has a great potential to secure irrigation viability and also the control of releasing the flow that we need to release in the river to move on to Saskatchewan. So and using more water. So I think those kinds, that's kind of three different areas, but I think we're optimistic about all of that, and it's about leadership. I really think in Alberta we're ahead of the game. The premier's been talking about these kinds of things, taking a lead. Also in the Alberta relationship with the Americans, we don't know, as you said, what that's going to look like after the weekend. But I'm optimistic that those are things we'll negotiate and figure out.
I want to
and I
just,
think we'll
oh, go ahead.
go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I just want to flip the original question a little bit because I am cautious of time and I know you have another meeting you have to get to. So I want to get this in. You talked about it a little bit already, but what's the thing you look at and say, you know what, we have our issues. The county does have our issues. Everyone does, and it's just the name of the game. But this is the thing I am proud about when it comes to the County of Newell. This is the accomplishment that we have done in my time in office that I can look back and say, even if I leave tomorrow on January 30th, I leave the County of Newell in a great spot to grow and continue to be prosperous. What's that thing for you as Reeve?
That's a tough question.
Everyone never asks the positive questions. It's always the negative questions, but I ask the positive questions.
Yeah, that's a good positive question, and I think we've the two things. One, I think the fact that the council has worked together to get some things done, to complete some projects that were already in the works when we got there, and to set up for some new ones. And I think CDC South is one of those. That's probably, I've said to our staff, and we've talked about it as council, we wouldn't be able to think about that if we didn't have a good staff behind us getting the day-to-day work done. And they they say, well, we've kind of been drinking out of a fire hose on that project because it's going to be different. Whereas it was a provincially funded facility, we're taking over a lease that now is going to pay the bills from activity that happens out there, which is and from attracting entrepreneurial investment. So as well as research, which still has some public funding to it. But I think that's one of the things that will be positive for the community. And I mentioned it a little bit. Even just the pride that the community had in the place when it was looking good, it just was neglected, and I think the community is looking forward to being proud of what they see out there and what they can use, even from an aesthetic perspective. Who knows where that'll go? I hope we look back and say, well, it's a risk, but there's seldom much gained if there isn't something to risk. So it's a risk worth taking.
I agree wholeheartedly. I want to turn to my new segment on the show, and it's only for Alberta municipal leaders. So you have the pleasure to try to answer this question as best as you can. We are, as of this airing, 8 months from the next municipal elections here in the province of Alberta. That means municipal leaders like yourself are thinking about putting their name back on the ballot or taking a walk in the snow and going off into retirement. Have you made your decision on if you're going to be standing in the upcoming October 2025 elections, Reeve?
Not completely at this point, but I'm optimistic that I may do that if I have support of my family and the community, I guess. But
The
that decision
family is
hasn't
always
been made.
the priority, right? Because if the wife says no, you're not running.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, that's right. And I've gotten good support that way. So we'll see what happens. But it's the people that we work with that make it enjoyable and rewarding, and can't say enough about that in the experience with the County of Newell, and also the other levels of government that we have the privilege of working with. So uh, we'll see.
Well, we will see, and I will keep an eye on to see if there's any announcement coming up from the county. I want to turn to my last segment, and this is about the County of Newell, but from a perspective that I like to talk about, and that is tourism. I think every
Mm.
municipality has great tourism draws. I think there's hidden gems in every single community across this great country and province. What is the tourism that you wish people knew about when they came through the County of Newell? What's the thing that you tell people if you come here, you have to stop and see this?
Well, Dinosaur Provincial Park is a World Heritage Site. It's a remarkable landscape that is really a well kept secret for many people, but it's remarkable how what an amazing experience it is when people first see that. Years ago, I had the opportunity to bring one of the largest meat buyers of Canadian beef products in Hong Kong out there, and it was an example of just how amazing that site is for people, as well as Kinbrook Island Provincial Park, which has Lake Newell, which is the one of the best warm water lakes in Alberta, really. It's an irrigation reservoir that serves a lot of people's recreational interests every day. Another thing that the county has done together with the city of Brooks is we've paved a pathway all the way out to Kinbrook Island, and it will also go out to Lake Newell Resort. So that's a significant benefit for tourists because they can come out there and go for a walk on a paved trail and watch the birds and nature, or take a bike ride and connect to the city of Brooks. It's about a 14 or 15 kilometer trail, so it's a significant pathway. It hasn't been officially opened yet, but we'll have an opening for it this in spring.
Well,
So
I will
looking
be
forward to
there.
that.
I'll be there in the spring, so that way I can see it when it gets open. So hopefully we can grab a
Yes.
coffee while I'm in town. But before I
Yeah.
let you go, I have one last question for you. It's the $1 million question. I think you know how to answer it, so let's put it on the record right here, right now. What makes the County of Newell such a unique place to live, to work, and to raise a family?
Well, it's the people, it's the landscape, it's water, it's it's all of the above. But at the top of the list is the people. It probably is anywhere, but we've got a unique landscape and good people working in the area, and that's a significant asset to all of us.
Reeve, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for sitting down and doing this interview. I know you were a little apprehensive at first. You just said you weren't sure if you were going to be able to fill 40 minutes, but look at that. 40 minutes have just flown
Yeah,
by. So thank
here
you
we
so
are.
much
Yeah,
from the bottom of my heart for doing this interview, and I much appreciate it. I look forward to coming out to the County of Newell this spring to see the grand opening.
that'd be great, Chris, and thank you for this too. Appreciate your interest and what you're doing for all of us in terms of communication and keeping us connected. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Cross Border Interviews. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights from one of Alberta's municipal leaders. To stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes, don't forget to subscribe to your favorite podcast channel or head over to the Cross Border Network YouTube channel and give us a follow there. It ensures that you stay in the loop with all of our great interviews from across Canada and here in Alberta. For even more content and learn more about the stories and the people that we feature on this show, visit us online at crossborderinterviews.ca. Your support means the world to us, so share this episode with your friends, your family members, and even your community to help keep the conversation going. So until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you next time here on Cross Border Interviews. Till then, everyone.